Hello and welcome to the CNBC TV 18 special. I'm Shireen Ban and we're in a special conversation with the global CEO of LinkedIn. Jeff, appreciate you joining us on the show. You've just come away from an hour-long meeting with the Prime Minister. A lot of what you're planning here in India with LinkedIn is aligned to the government's Digital India mission, the Skill India mission, the Make in India mission. What was the conversation with the Prime Minister about?
It was great. First of all, as you said, there's a lot of alignment in terms of the things he's most passionate about and most excited about in terms of stimulating and reinforcing the spirit of entrepreneurship, creating economic opportunity, ensuring people have the skills they need for the jobs that are and will be as opposed to the jobs that once were. So we talked a little bit about the recent launches. We talked about some ideas he has to broaden our footprint here and areas we can continue to work together, things like skills matching, certifications. He had a lot of interesting ideas in terms of connecting people in rural areas with entrepreneurs that can help them further their entrepreneurial ideas. So it was a great meeting.
So let me talk about the 3 launches that you've done in India, and you announced those just yesterday. This is the second country after China outside of the US where you've actually done some development, country-specific development. Explain to us what the insights were from your experience in China and how that was used here in India to come up with LinkedIn Lite, your startup platform as well as your skills platform.
Yeah, so we had some experience doing local development in Beijing. China is one of our largest opportunities in the world, if not our singularly largest opportunity. And it's really important to not only extend our global platform there and localize via language, but also to understand what Chinese members are looking for and to ensure that if we're not able to deliver that via the global platform, that we can develop a standalone application that meets those needs. And having run that playbook and seen where we had success and where we could continue to improve, we thought India would be another very obvious candidate for that kind of development for a whole host of reasons. Probably starting with the fact that India is our second largest country in the world in terms of LinkedIn membership following the United States. So north of 37 million members here now. And we have a critical mass of talent. Our office here in total is roughly 900 folks or so. And we have been doing R&D in India now really since inception, but it's been interesting to see the evolution. It started with quality assurance and evolved into network operational support, 24/7 support, and then most recently research and development, developing applications for this Indian audience. So as we like to say, made in India, for India, by India. And the 3 announcements yesterday are that kind of work coming to fruition now.
So, you know, on the back of the 3 announcements that you made and these 3 new products that you hoped to sort of ramp up in India, what is the growth strategy and what are the numbers that you're expecting? What is the target that you've put out for your team?
Well, the membership numbers I cited earlier at 37 million, that's going to continue to grow, we believe, quite rapidly. And we've seen a resurgence there, re-acceleration of that growth rate following installing a new country manager. Akshay Katari is doing a wonderful job. And one of the reasons Akshay's in this role is he's a product person. So we acquired Akshay's company called Pulse in the United States, and he did such an outstanding job there with his partner Ankit. We installed him as the country manager here to develop product with that very specific agenda in mind. And as a result, we've seen a re-acceleration of growth across a number of key metrics. Engaged feed sessions are now way up. Messages sent. This is the fastest growing market in the world for us in terms of messages sent with our new communications capability in terms of messaging. We've seen job applicants and the number of job applications also surge quite dramatically with this greater localization focus.
Okay, you know, let me move away from India and talk to you about your memo post the Microsoft sort of deal, which still hasn't closed, by the way. So any update on when we are likely to see closure on that?
We haven't discussed the timing publicly, but things continue to move according to schedule. Okay,
so let me pick up on the memo that you sent out, if I could call it that, to employees. And it had a sort of very Jerry Maguire-esque tone to it. And I'm saying that in a good way. When Satya had me at Independence, really, you didn't think a Jerry Maguire then?
There may have been a subtle reference there, yeah.
So, you know, what can we expect now as far as LinkedIn is concerned? Yes, you will operate as an independent entity, but, you know, in terms of the shared future that you hope to create with Microsoft, what should we realistically expect?
Yeah, for all the reasons we were excited to do the deal to begin with over the last several months, as we've had an opportunity to collaborate and partner a little more closely on where we want to take things post the close, we've just gotten more excited, and that's been the case for both LinkedIn and Microsoft. Product integration is something we've been very focused on since the announcement, and post-close, you know, we're going to start to see a lot of that work start to come to fruition and be executed. So some of the ideas that we're kicking around in some of the areas that we're prioritizing, Outlook integration is kind of a no-brainer in terms of Microsoft Outlook email integration with LinkedIn identity. So when you're receiving an email from someone, you're always going to know who that person is if they have a LinkedIn profile. If you're not connected to them already, you're a click of a button away from having them join your network. If you already know them, you're going to be able to see things that they recently shared or are interested in talking about. It just creates a lot of value, and it's such a seamless integration. It just makes all the sense in the world. We're going to be doing some really interesting integration with Windows. Windows 10 is now the fastest growing or the fastest adopted version of Windows in the history of Microsoft. And they've got some very ambitious goals there through the year 2018 in terms of total installs, hundreds of millions today, and that's going to continue to grow. And we can do integrations with notifications so that when there's key actions on LinkedIn that you should be responding to, you're going to be able to see that within your desktop. We've got some really cool stuff we can do with learning integration. So if you're using applications from within Windows, you're going to be able to see coursework that's going to enable you to get the most out of that application. So there's lots of ideas like that. The Dynamics platform that they've got that supports multiple business applications ranging from CRM to human capital management to ERP. A lot we can do there specifically with regard to integration of Sales Navigator, our sales intelligence tool, with their CRM application. So I could go on and on. I mean, there's so many. Part of the challenge is going to be knowing where to focus and prioritize.
So assuming that we were to see the closure by the end of the year, or before the end of the year, when do you actually see both you and Microsoft moving forward on some of these ideas that you just talked about?
Well, we've started the planning process in terms of what's possible. You're limited in what you can actually execute upon prior to close. But post-close, we're going to get going right away, and we want to hit the ground with our feet running.
You retain your independence, but integration has its own challenges. What do you think could be the biggest challenge, and you know, how are you gearing up the LinkedIn system to sort of collaborate now with the Microsoft system?
Yeah, Satya from day one has been very clear about this idea of LinkedIn preserving its independence and autonomy in terms of continuing to grow the network and realizing the full potential of our platform, and he continues to be incredibly supportive along those lines. So in that respect, I think this is a little different than some acquisitions and some acquisition integration efforts. Rather than have two integration teams, Satya and I talked about having one acquisition integration team, and that's a bit unusual as well. And so the team is working very closely together in terms of those priorities I spoke about earlier. So it's moving better than I could have anticipated, and I had high hopes. In terms of areas that you want to keep an eye on, you know, traditionally in the realm of M&A, one of the real sticking points that can create a problem over time is lack of alignment in terms of sense of purpose and lack of alignment in terms of culture and values.
Right.
And even before we announced that definitive agreement, Satya and I spent a lot of time talking about how aligned we were on these critical issues and areas. And it turns out Microsoft's mission and LinkedIn's mission are essentially the same. They're worded slightly differently. Our audiences and the value that we're trying to create in the world are so strongly aligned. Microsoft obviously has greater scale at nearly 1 billion customers, north of 1 billion customers within their footprint, and all the ways we'll be able to leverage that going forward. And then on culture, on values, you know, where Satya's taken Microsoft over the last 2+ years, in my opinion, is quite extraordinary. You know, you cover a lot of companies, and you cover CEO changes, and It's difficult to change the culture of an organization. It's arguably one of the most difficult things you can do
at
operationally.
That scale, yes.
At that scale, it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
And you see the way the organization has evolved, more agile, more open. I think Microsoft has become even more innovative. And a lot of this is by virtue of Satya's focus and the way the team is rallying behind that. And you can see that it was always there. This is what Microsoft wants to do. And he's been very clear in terms of maintaining that momentum, and we're really excited to be a part of it.
You know, that explains the reason why you decided to go with Microsoft. But I want to ask you a different question, and I think this is a dilemma that a lot of startups in India are faced with as well as they try and grow and scale. And I go back to your memo, because in your memo you talk about imagine a world where we're not reacting to the intensified competitive landscape, where we're not pressured to compromise on long-term investments, hesitant to disrupt oneself, or hamstrung in the way we can reward and acquire new talent. So the deal with Microsoft, of course, you were lucky to find a partner where your purposes were aligned, but this was really about growth and perhaps eventually even self-preservation, wasn't it? Is this going to be something that we're going to see forced consolidation in the market much more?
You know, you have already started to see an acceleration of M&A at scale over the last year or so. I do think you're going to see a continuation of that trend over time. The private markets have become a little bit heated in terms of valuation. We're already starting to see some compression there. And that's going to put some pressure on companies to really think through their futures and what they'd ultimately like to accomplish and the best way to accomplish that. And in our situation, with a combination like Microsoft, it just made all the sense in the world for the reasons that you just cited. But every company needs to really understand what they're trying to accomplish. That's where it begins. And then have an honest conversation with themselves about the likelihood to be able to accomplish that as an independent company versus being combined with another entity. And for these privately held companies, of course, another variable in all of that is, do you plan on becoming a public company?
Yeah.
Is that window going to be open for you in terms of your fundamentals, in terms of the momentum, in terms of the macro, et cetera? So I do think you're going to see a continuation of more M&A rather than less.
Okay. And speaking of M&A, you were talking about Akshay Kothari coming on board by way of an acquisition that you did. What's the outlook on that? Any other capabilities, any other niches that you would like to plug by way of acquisition?
So we're always on the lookout for acquisitions that can accelerate our product roadmap, that can accelerate our scale, that are accretive in terms of the top or bottom line, and accretive in terms of talent.
Anything in India in specific that's on the radar?
We've looked at a few things. I can't mention them publicly, but all aligned.
Exciting?
Yes. I mean, this market for us, you can't help but be excited in terms of the growth in the overall Indian economy, the growth and the momentum and the acceleration of the spirit of entrepreneurship here. The startup ecosystem here is amazing. You know, you look at companies like Ola and Flipkart and a number of other companies that are also experiencing hypergrowth at pretty significant scale. We're going to continue to prioritize on skills and learning and development, and ensuring that not only graduating students in India, but also professionals have the skills they need to get the jobs that they want. So that's going to be an area of continued focus. We're going to continue to focus on small and medium-sized businesses. One of the things we announced yesterday was our starter package, which is really aimed for startups to be able to hire more effectively, brand themselves more effectively, learn more effectively, and it's priced accordingly. So we're going to continue focusing.
So that's the subscription model that you're using for that?
Last one is a subscription model. And then jobs. You know, one of the reasons we've seen stronger engagement in India over the last couple of years, one of the reasons we've seen a pretty significant acceleration in job applicants and job applications is jobs liquidity. The number of jobs available on LinkedIn that we can help our members find has increased quite dramatically. That's a strategic decision for us on a global basis, which is we want to ultimately be able to represent every job that's available through LinkedIn. And so we've looked at those areas. We're going to continue to look at those areas. And if there's companies that we think would be a fit that's consistent with that framework we talked about earlier, we would take a look.
What I find interesting about the placement product is that you're really trying to level the playing field, so to speak, and you're trying to reach out to students in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. How many companies are on board for the placement product?
So we originally started with a pilot, and that was on the order of 14 or so plus companies. We've now expanded that's completely open, and ultimately we want to work with, ideally, every university that's trying to place students. And to your point, this is not just about the highest value roles. It's not just about high value white collar roles. It's about all roles, ultimately, and creating economic opportunity for all members of the workforce here in India. That's also important to the Prime Minister. That was one of the things that we talked about, which is ensuring that it's going to be a broad base of opportunities, and that the skills and the certifications are not just for those higher value roles.
Has he given you some ideas that he wants you to think about?
He gave me quite a few ideas. We did a little bit of brainstorming, and the ideas are consistent with this notion of increasing learning and certifications, trying to ensure that first-time entrepreneurs, nascent entrepreneurs in more rural areas that don't have access to all the resources that some of the folks in more urban areas would have access to, that we can connect them with people that are going to accelerate and facilitate the way in which they're trying to start new businesses, which I thought was really interesting. We talked a little bit about attracting talent from outside of India into India in terms of specific roles and opportunities, and then conversely exporting some of the amazing talent in India to places in the world where there are shortages for that kind of talent. So it was covered a lot of stuff.
So when can we expect you back to launch more products on the basis of the conversation that you just had with the Prime Minister?
Well, for that, you know, it's going to be about Akshay and the team. And one of the things we were talking about as we were walking out of this meeting is the way in which this strategy continues to unfold even better than we could have anticipated. So when you sit down with the head of state for a country like that and you start brainstorming so many of these amazing ideas, traditionally you'd leave a meeting like that and you'd be thinking to yourself, how are we going to prioritize that? We're more focused on the global platform. When you've got the local presence we have in India, when you have a country manager like Akshay, when you have a critical mass of talent in R&D, it's not just focused on offshoring or back office, but front office, original application development. Then it's up to our team that work with this administration to say, okay, what should we start with? Where are we going to go first? And to go make it happen. And so it's not just about this kind of flying at 100,000 feet. It's about, let's start making this happen. Let's get it done.
So China's done, India's done, you know, on the back of the experience that you've had in these two markets now, and the solutions that you've come up with, the products that you've come up with specifically for India, how soon do you believe that you may be able to take these outside of India? This is made for India by India, but do you believe you could export these into other emerging markets?
That's exactly the idea. So it's not just about focusing on this market at the exclusion of other markets as well. When you see a product like Placements, when you see a product like LinkedIn Lite, these are products that can be applied on a global basis. Lite in particular, which is going to facilitate the way in which people in India are going to have access at far greater speeds, who don't necessarily have high quality connectivity or high quality storage in terms of their mobile subscriptions. There's going to be other emerging markets elsewhere in the world where we can apply that directly.
How soon do you believe that you could perhaps do that?
As soon as we can make it work here. You know, we don't want to jump the gun and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but we want to make sure we can demonstrate success here and then leverage that playbook going forward.
Okay, you know, talking about the challenges that that we're seeing, not just in India but globally, and specifically to do with technology, and I go back again to your memo, where you talk about, you know, the idea that machines are going to take over and all of that. It's happening now, and how companies like yours will need to address how you can benefit by adding economic value. But what sort of challenges does that throw up at this point in time for companies like yours?
So, well, for companies like ours, I think it's an enormous opportunity to contribute and make a difference in a meaningful way. To your point, we're just starting to see the beginning, the earliest stages of significant job displacement by virtue of new technologies. And it seems like every other week you're seeing a new announcement of a major company somewhere in the world that's going to be replacing people with robots, with new technologies. So for us, it's less of a challenge, it's more of an opportunity, and I think it begins with skills and training and ensuring that people are developing the skills they need for where the jobs are going to be growing the fastest, and also starting to get ahead of this and working with companies more proactively. I think it's wonderful for companies to become more productive and to innovate. At the same time, it'd be really interesting to see every time a company announces new technology that's going to displace workers, what they're doing about the workers being displaced. How are they retraining them? How are they starting to find what the next opportunity is for those folks, either within their company or in other companies as well? I think that's going to be so critical going forward.
Let me ask you this in the context of what we're seeing happen in India, because a lot of the Indian IT services companies have been focused largely on the back office, and now, as you pointed out yourself, it is all about the front office. It's what you do on the analytics side. It's what you do on the front end. They're trying to build these new capabilities, either organically or inorganically, but what do you see as being the challenges as they make that shift?
For us, it's been very organic. It's been a kind of a seamless transition, and it just made sense. I think it starts by ensuring you have a clear understanding of what you're trying to accomplish, and also not setting the bar too low in terms of what's possible. I think there's all kinds of opportunities for people to be leveraging the extraordinary talent here, to be developing new applications, to be developing new services, and it really starts with what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay, I know I'm out of time, so let me end by asking you, what is the LinkedIn of the future? You said you don't want to pivot yourself into a media company, even though you're now experimenting with video content and so on and so forth. What will the LinkedIn of the future look like?
So content for us is a key part of our offering in terms of ensuring that our members can stay connected and stay informed. But ultimately what we're trying to do is create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And the way we're going to do that is by developing the world's first economic graph. We're going to digitally map the global economy and ensure that capital, intellectual capital, working capital, and human capital will flow to where it can best be leveraged. And in doing so, the hope is we can help lift and transform the global economy.
And you're here to stay. Jeff, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. We wish you the very best of luck with your plans in India. Thanks very much for taking time out to speak with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up the CNBC TV 18 special. From all of us here, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.